Hi, I'm Dawn and this is where Shabby meets Bling. I am going to be using 2 thrifted items, one vintage, one outdated, and a roadside find in my project today. You are watching Flippin' Furniture Friday. I'd like to thank my co-host Zaina from OK at Home DIY for joining me. You're gonna find the links to her channel and the playlist in my description box below. Well, I went thrifting and this story takes place maybe 6 years ago, and I found this elephant and I just thought he was really cute. And I like wicker if it's the right style, but this guy spoke to me. He is in rough shape, really rough shape, but I thought, you know what? I can do something with him. So I was really stoked when I got him for $8. He is filthy dirty at the bottom. He is unraveling. There's a lot of his little caning that has come undone. But you know what? I'll figure something up because he's cute. Look at his little eye. He's a sweetie. So I've already named him. You probably thought I'd have a girl elephant and name her something like Ella, but no, this is Harry Elefante. These are all mid-century and they were all hand woven and they're all different, which makes them pretty cool. These elephants are considered plant stands or side tables. He's kind of short for a side table and the little surface that you would sit anything on is extremely small. I'm going to make him into a legitimate side table. So let's take a look at what they go for if they're in pretty good condition. I happened to find mine at a thrift shop, but if you go online, you can find them advertised on eBay, Etsy, Cherish, anywhere from $100 and some all the way up past $1,000, depending on the condition. My plan as of right now is to elevate it with this little roadside find, which I thought was pretty cool, really damaged, needs some help, but that's okay, and probably paint everything. You know I love to paint, so I'll probably paint everything. The base and Harry and anything else I put with it. Step 1, as usual, what are we gonna do? You know, we're gonna disassemble. So screws on the back, I unscrew it, flip it over, pry it, and then I eventually have to smack it out with my hammer, and we're ready for the next step. From the original, I will salvage these 2 pieces, get rid of the staples and reuse them. And then I'm going to take a scrap piece of luan and cut a nice piece out of it to go right here. So Mr. Elefante will have a nice sturdy place to stand. Before I reassemble, I clean up my little base and then I start rebuilding. I've got my pieces and the staples are removed from these little guys. You can see they had to be cut off because they were too thick to get out. No prying, it would work. So I'm gonna take this whole thing and I'm gonna flip it upside down. That is the name of the game right now. I'm gonna take that piece like so, flip this guy right on top of it and snuggie it in there. And then I will take my 2 side pieces, those 2 salvage pieces from the original, and I'm gonna glue them. I will glue it to the side and to that new piece of luan that we cut. Now, if I can clamp this thing and keep it nice and flat on my surface, this should work. That's the plan. So I get both sides of this piece glued and then I go to clamp it. Well, I can't really clamp it just head on, so I'm gonna have to stick a wedged piece. This is molding. It's like a picture frame molding to fill that gap, and that way I can clamp it because it's 2 flat surfaces now that I'm clamping together, and I have to do this for both sides. Now, as I'm clamping, I'm making sure that it's laid flat against my luan piece, because if it's not, if it pushes up at all, this thing will either be recessed or it will be outside the frame. So I need to make sure everything is nice and flat and tight as I clamp it. I will do the exact same on the other side, and I make sure I get rid of the glue even though no one will ever see it. I have unclamped it because it's nice and dry. Now, I have a very fine gap around the edges of my Luan because this thing's old, it wasn't square, so my square piece of Luan didn't quite fit perfectly. So I'm just using one time. I could also definitely use wood filler, but this stuff dries faster and it will suffice. So I am just using one time to fill the gap on the top, the bottom, and the sides. Once my one time is dry, I give everything a nice sanding. Because we're gonna paint this thing. Yes, we are. Yes, we are. I am starting this project by using French linen. It is a chalk paint, and it is by Hello Hobby. You can't get this paint anymore because Hello Hobby, which is a Walmart brand, has discontinued their chalk paint, which made me super sad because this color is like one of my favorites ever from any chalk paint company. So I'm going to hoard what I have. I have a brand new bottle and I have this partial bottle, so it's going to be kept for very special items. This will probably need 2 coats, which it will get, and then I am going to make this little riser even taller for my Elefante. This riser is getting little bun feet in the form of finials from a curtain rod. I am measuring in exactly where I want to screw these. I'm not even going to pre-drill. This old wood is relatively soft and pre-drilling would not be necessary. So I make sure that I am not going to impede that staple that is in the corner of each of my corners. Corner. And I am marking with a red marker so I can see it exactly where I want each of my little finials, now bun feet, to be located. Once I have all 4 corners designated, then I'm just going to screw in my little bun feet. After they are screwed in, I will paint these that beautiful French linen as well, and then the entire piece will get a coat of matte Mod Podge. Yeah, even when I'm doing furniture, I bust out the podge. It had to happen. The podge. While all that is drying, we need to do something for poor Harry. You can see this section here is intact, but that is the only section all the way around the perimeter of the base of Harry's little wood stand. So I need to figure out a way to make this look like he's literally not falling apart, because he is literally falling apart. Every time I touch him, some of the reeds come out. He is so frail. I have, over a span of time, collected basket making little things, different kinds of reeds and different kinds of strips. You can see how inexpensive I was able to find them thrifting. All of this here was in one large bag. I have used these things on other projects. I used it on this. I'll leave the link in the description box so you can see what fun things you can do with spare basket making parts. But I'm going to use the skinniest of the reeds for this project, and they're the closest to what is on Harry. So I'm going to take them and I am going to place them next to the existing broken reeds that are going vertical, and then I am going to cut them, leaving maybe 4 or 5 inches protruding out. Now these are very brittle, not as brittle as Harry, but they are brittle, and I am taking my time, and yes, I had some break on me, so I just replaced them a second time or a third. I go all the way around the perimeter of Harry, and I am going to remove the area that was intact. I need the bottom to look cohesive, and there is no way to work into what is already there, so I just need to create a new bottom all the way around. I keep progressing around the perimeter until I get to the section that was intact. I remove it and continue until I am finished, and this is what it looks like. There are some areas where I was only able to get 1 because it would not fit in the other side. I tried to do 2 in each little area. You can see what I'm saying there, but in some areas it just wouldn't happen, especially the corners. They were super tough, super tight. So now that I have this intact, now I'm gonna do some weaving. I take a very, very, very long piece of this reeding, and I create kind of my own little slot, and I push it in as deep as I can without breaking it, and then I start weaving. So I will go behind 2, and then in front of 2, and then behind 2, and so on, all the way around. Now, because of the fact that this is so broken, the area that I am repairing, the horizontals, some of them are broken at different levels. Some rows exist intact, some do not. Now, I'm going to have some of my weaving not be exactly up front, behind, and so on, like it should be, because of some of those missing rows. I continue until I make it all the way around, and then I continue until I get the whole part covered that I want covered. And I believe I went around like 3.5 times to make it look kind of like it needed to look. Then I need to figure out how I am going to finish this. I know that what I'm going to do here is not the way a professional would do it, but I'm just going to try to make it look nice and try to mimic what was there originally as best I can. So I am shortening my little reeds that are sticking out, and then I am going to glue them behind that woven screen that I ended up creating there. So I'm just tucking them in and trying real hard not to break them as I go, because they're very difficult to replace, because that did happen. So I will cut some more off and then tuck them behind those and work my way all the way around. And this in itself kind of creates a braided pattern, lucky enough. Who'da thunk it, right? So I cut, I glue, I tuck. Cut, glue, and tuck all the way around. And to keep some of these in place, I am using my tiny little clamps so they don't pop out, and when they dry, they are level. This is Harry's base, so we can't have him breaking these by standing on them. Once I figured out a pattern, it went pretty smooth, I have to admit. You can see the braided pattern kind of appearing, and it is not perfect in some areas. It wasn't going to be, not with all the repairs that really truly needed to be made. Totally dry and unclamped, this is what my repair job looks like. Not too bad. Now Mr. Elefante needs a good bath. He is filthy. So I'm bathing him in a hardwood laminate cleaner. This is by Zepp. I love Zepp products. They are pretty amazing. I spray a small area down with the Zepp, and then I'm going to lightly brush him with a soft bristle toothbrush. And I am being very, very careful because this guy is super delicate. Little pieces are falling off here and there, so I want to keep that to a minimum if possible. So I gently scrub him, and then I come back with warm water and scrub him again with that soft bristled toothbrush, and then I come in with a soft cloth and take away as much of the dirt as I can. My rags were filthy when I was done with this. 3 rags it took, and it took nearly the entire bottle of Zepp. But he is coming clean. I am pretty happy, and he doesn't look happy. Look at his little eye, but when it's all said and done, he's pretty pleased. Trust me. He's pretty happy. It's like bathing a dog that doesn't like baths. He doesn't look happy at all here. Once I finish, I set him aside to dry thoroughly. You can see how clean Harry is now, and he's a little happier. He's sleepy. That bath made him tired. I am going to give him some color now. I am using a Minwax stain, and it is a golden pecan. I am gonna bathe him again, not in water this time, but in that Minwax. And I start gently because I'm not sure how this is gonna take, but it took it. Harry just drank that stain on up. He was thirsty. You drink, Harry. I ended up drenching my rag and literally squeezing out the stain onto Harry. And that's how much it drank in. I used almost this entire can, which seems ridiculous, but it's true. It's a true story. I even stained his tusks. That's not easy to say. Tusks. Once I was done, I set them aside to dry. I had a feeling that the new part would not take the stain, and it didn't. It didn't. So I am taking my truffle chalk paint, and it is a Waverly, and I am touching up the new parts, just the new parts, to blend with this section. None of Harry's body took the stain equally and evenly and the same color everywhere. He has been around for decades, and so he has had sun hit him in some places that he hasn't in others. So just like us. So I am taking that truffle and I am just touching up the base of it to look like the very tip top right there, and it blended in beautifully. Some of these vintage elephants came with trays. Now, you remember the shape of the top of Harry, so I figured, why not make a tray? This is an item that I got many years ago. I picked it up for $2 while I was thrifting, and since the shape is almost identical to the shape of the top of Harry, I thought, I'm going to turn this thing into a tray. So I disassembled it, I took off the top, I removed all the hardware, and pulled out the insides, and the plan was to remove the glass, repair the frame that was coming apart, and then to re-glue it and put the glass back in. Well, once I repaired the frame, the glass didn't fit. That's probably why someone jimmy rigged it to begin with. So on to plan B. I focus on the bottom of this little curio shadow box, and I sand it up really well, and then I give it a coat of paint. I paint it that beautiful, gorgeous French linen to match the base that Harry will be standing on, and once it's dry, I gave it a second coat. Then I turned my attention back to the frame that I had repaired, and I gave it a first coat of French linen. Now, I needed to take up some of the space where that glass was, so I took some scraps and I cut them down to fill that gap where the glass would have fit into the back of that frame. I wood glued those pieces in, I clamped them nice and secure and let them dry. Then I wood glued and clamped that frame onto the bottom of that little curio shadow box. This is going to create my tray. Once my wood glue is dry, I give the entire tray a coat of my French linen, and once that's dry, I coat the entire thing in Mod Podge, matte Mod Podge, just like our base. I then take this beautiful cotton lace from burlapfabric.com and glue it around the exterior perimeter of our tray using 3-in-1 glue, then coat it in that matte Mod Podge. Once the Mod Podge on my lace is dry, I coat the entire thing with French linen so it is the same color as the rest of the tray. Now once that French linen is dry, I am going to hit it with matte Mod Podge yet again to seal it for the next step. Now the next step I'm going to show you on the base because I treat both the tray and the base in the same fashion. I am applying my brown antiquing wax to different sections of the base. And once I get the base, this section anyway, covered, I am going to come back with, believe it or not, my French linen paint. So I get a nice coat onto this side of the base. And using one of my older brushes, I take my French linen paint and blend it into that brown antiquing wax, which is a Hobby Lobby antiquing wax. I want this to look like it's old and weathered, almost like it had been out in the sun for many a moon as well. As far as the tray goes, I want it to look the same, but I want that lace to look like it was carved right into the wood. Now, the thing I'm going to do next is kind of odd, because once I get the wax and the paint blended nicely, I am going to coat the entire thing. I'm going to give it a little curing time, but I'm going to coat the entire thing with that same pecan stain that I used all over Harry. After I'm done with the base, I will give the same treatment to my tray. Now, if you see the kind of orangey red undertone of this pecan stain, that combined with my brown antiquing wax will bridge the gap between the base, the tray, and Harry. Once I'm done, I just need to let everything dry really well. Harry Elefante's makeover is complete, and he'd like to say hello. Just a quick reminder on how dirty and worn Harry Elefante was before his intense makeover. This is after. This is the top of Harry, cleaned and stained. Because of how intricate that top was, I wasn't able to make any repairs. Here he is in all his glory, showing off his makeover. He's hoping to get a girlfriend out of all this. Wink, wink. Isn't he sweet? No more tattered bottom, no more caked on dirt and grime from years of neglect. He's elevated by that fabulous riser. He looks like a piece of furniture. That furniture look will be complete by putting that tray on top. There it is, and it dried well, believe it or not. A combination of Mod Podge, paint, wax, antiquing wax, and stain. It dried nice and hard to the touch, so nothing is going to penetrate it no matter what I put on here. Even if I put a plant or a wet glass, it should be just fine. And it matches that base so well. It even coordinates well with my curtains, as if like that were planned somehow, but it wasn't. It really wasn't. But it blends beautifully with my curtains. And he looks so proud. Look at him. So lovely. He's vintage, so I thought I'd add some of my vintage barware on top. I collect many vintage items, barware being one of them. So why not display some of my favorites right on top of good old Harry Elefante? He has gone from discarded to dramatic. At least in my eyes. He will sit proudly in my dining room for many years to come. Thanks again to Zaina for joining me in this Flippin' Furniture Friday. You're going to find the links to her channel and the playlist in my description box below. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, give it a like, share it with your family and friends, and anyone that likes thrifting, repurposing, DIYs, shabby chic, and French country decor. You can follow me on Instagram, and don't forget to check out my shop on Etsy. Leave me a comment. I would absolutely love to hear from you. Ring the bell for notifications of all my upcoming videos. Don't forget to subscribe. It's a great way to support my channel. But for now, this is Dawn with Shabby Meets Bling. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll look forward to seeing you next time.